In a poor rural village in Africa, a proud and bitter young woman named Ajuma constantly mocked those around her, especially the elderly. One day, a quiet and oddly dressed man visited their village market. He bought nothing, just watched. When he approached Ajuma to help a limping old woman, Ajuma insulted him harshly in front of everyone, calling him a useless wanderer pretending to be rich. The man said nothing, but before leaving he whispered, "From your mouth grows your pride, and from your ears will grow your shame." That night, Ajuma's ears began to grow uncontrollably, and no one could stop it. The morning after the curse began, Ajuma awoke to screams, not hers but her younger sister's. Amina had come into the hut carrying a bowl of warm porridge, only to drop it as her eyes locked onto the horrifying sight before her. Ajuma's ears, once neat and tucked behind her braided hair, now hung past her jawline, swollen and thick like the leathery leaves of a baobab tree. At first, she thought it was a dream, but when she sat up and felt the heavy weight brushing her shoulders, panic set in. "What is this?" Ajuma cried, clutching her head. "What is happening to me?" No answer came. Her mother, already outside grinding millet, rushed in after hearing the commotion. When she saw her eldest daughter's face, her hands went limp. The pestle fell from her grip and rolled across the earthen floor. That same day, word spread through the village like dry harmattan wind catching fire. Children peeked through the cracks in the mud walls. Women whispered behind their wrappers. Men shook their heads. The proudest girl in the village had become a laughingstock. "Curse," they said. "A punishment from the gods," others added. But Ajuma remembered the man. Quiet one. The one she had mocked for his ragged slippers and silent eyes. "From your mouth grows your pride, and from your ears will grow your shame." She had laughed when he said it. Laughed loudly, cruelly, the way she always did when belittling others. But now her laughter was gone, buried beneath fear, shame, and a strange echoing pain in her ears. The village elders were summoned. They sat in a circle, cross-legged, with their walking sticks beside them. One by one, they examined Ajuma like a sacred drum, poking, asking, sniffing herbs. But none could stop what was happening. By evening, her ears had grown longer, brushing her collarbones. "She must have angered a spirit," said Old Man Jang, whose word was often final. But which one? That night, Ajuma couldn't sleep. Each time she turned, her ears would slap against the mat. The itching, the heaviness, the never-ending whispers from outside her window. It was unbearable. She stuffed cotton into them to dull the noise, but they only grew heavier. By the third day, the village healer was brought from a nearby town. She came dressed in deep indigo robes, beads clinking with every step. Her name was Mama Lady, and she had seen many strange things in her time. Talking goats, rivers that dried only when angry, even children born with feathers. But never this. Mama Lady mixed herbs, chanted incantations, bathed Ajuma in river water, and pressed kola nut ash against her cheeks. But nothing worked. The ears kept growing. And growing. It was the 7th day when Ajuma stopped coming out. She locked herself in her hut, covered all the mirrors, and wept for hours. Her hair was tangled, her face blotchy, her pride shattered. She no longer cared for the villagers' whispers. She just wanted to disappear. But something strange happened on the 8th day. Knock. Not from a villager. Not from her family. But from someone else. Slow, steady knock. 3 times. "Who is it?" she whispered, pulling a shawl around her ears. A voice responded, low and clear. "Someone who heard your silence." She opened the door just a crack and froze. It was him. The man from the market. The one she had mocked. Only now he wasn't in rags. He wore a long, dark tunic with golden embroidery, and his sandals were made of fine leather. A car, no, 2 cars, waited behind him. Sleek, foreign, black as night. Ajuma's knees buckled. "You," she whispered. "You cursed me." "No," he said calmly. "You cursed yourself." She sank to the floor, her swollen ears brushing the dusty ground. "I didn't know. I didn't know you were." He raised his hand. It is not about who I am. It is about who you were when no one was watching. You humiliated a stranger, shamed the weak, and laughed at pain. Ajuma looked up, tears brimming. Then why are you here? The man stepped forward, setting a small leather bag beside her. Because pain, when understood, can be transformed. But shame must first be worn before it can be shed. In the bag were 3 things: a small mirror, a white stone, and a feather. This mirror, he said, is not for your face. It is for your heart. Look into it every day and remember who you were. Ajuma touched the cold glass. This stone, he continued, is from the deepest part of the Owena River. Carry it, and it will remind you that nothing is too heavy to be carried with grace. And the feather. This is from a bird that sings only when caged. Keep it near your ear. When you learn to listen more than you speak, you will hear it sing. Ajuma clutched the items, confused but grateful. She looked up to ask more, but he was gone. Just like before. Only the faint scent of sandalwood remained in the air. The days that followed were not easy. Ajuma tried to face the village again, but they still mocked her. Children ran away. Women refused to buy her groundnuts. She was now known as Ajuma with the elephant ears. But she changed. Slowly. She stopped talking over people. She began to listen. First to the wind, then to the birds, then to the voices of those she had ignored for years. Her mother, her sister, the old man by the well, the lame woman she once laughed at. She helped sweep the market. Sat beside the blind widow. Fed stray goats. One day, a young girl spilled her beans in the market and began to cry. Ajuma bent down, ears swaying awkwardly, and helped her pick them up. No words, just quiet kindness. That night she heard something strange. Soft trill. Musical. Like a bird. The feather by her bedside had begun to vibrate. She smiled for the first time in weeks. Weeks turned into months. Her ears didn't shrink, but they stopped growing. And slowly people noticed something else. That Ajuma had become gentle, humble, kind. She began to teach young girls how to make soap. She helped old Mama Kanda harvest yams. She even apologized publicly to the people she had mocked. Then, on the 6th full moon after the curse began, the village held a festival. The air was thick with drumbeats and jollof smoke. Everyone danced. Even Ajuma, though she stayed by the edge of the crowd. Suddenly the drums stopped. Hush fell. A voice called out from the edge of the village. Ajuma! She turned and gasped. It was him again. Dressed in white. Alone. He walked toward her slowly, the crowd parting. You've changed, he said. I had to, she whispered, to survive. He smiled. No. You changed to become who you were always meant to be. He reached into his robe and pulled out a small vial of oil. Kneel. Ajuma obeyed. He anointed her head, speaking words in a language older than the village. Then he touched her ears. They shimmered and shrank. In seconds they returned to their original size. Small, delicate, human. The villagers gasped. But Ajuma didn't celebrate. He simply wept, not from joy, but from understanding. That night she stood by the river, holding the feather, the stone, and the mirror. She whispered to the wind, "Thank you for breaking me, so I could be made whole." And somewhere far away, in a mansion filled with silence and ancient wisdom, the mysterious billionaire closed his eyes and smiled. Moral of the story: pride blinds but shame reveals. True transformation comes not from punishment, but from humility and listening with the heart. Ajuma stood by the river every morning, watching her reflection ripple with the current. Her ears were now back to normal. Small, graceful, forgettable. But she never forgot what they had become. And she never forgot why. The mirror, the white river stone, and the feather still sat on her wooden stool. Each morning, she would look into the mirror, say a quiet prayer, touch the stone to her chest, and gently place the feather beside her left ear, waiting, listening. Sometimes the feather would sing. Other times it would not. But she never rushed it. Because Ajuma had learned the rhythm of silence. Her transformation had not just healed her ears, it had changed the village. The people began to see her not as the cursed one, but as the wise one. They came to her not for gossip, but for advice. Mothers asked her to speak to their stubborn daughters. Young girls watched her every move. Even the chief's wife began inviting her to gatherings she once wasn't welcome to. Ajuma never boasted, never raised her voice. She just listened. She listened to the soil when it cracked, to the goats when they cried, to the skies when they wept, and most of all to the people. One day, a woman from another village came to visit. Her name was Nyakio, and her son had been born with no voice. She had heard of the woman who listens, and came with hope folded into her scarf. Ajuma took the boy into her hut. She didn't try to fix him. She didn't force him to speak. She simply knelt, looked into his eyes and whispered, "Even the wind has its language. Let's listen together." They sat in silence for hours. At sunset the boy smiled, and Ajuma heard the feather hum once again. But not everyone was happy with her peace. Far across the fields, in the larger town where traders and politicians gathered, a rich young man named Kolo heard of Ajuma's story. He was the younger cousin of the mysterious billionaire, the one Ajuma had insulted, the one who had given her the items of transformation. Kolo was spoiled, arrogant, and proud. He hated the way his cousin gave things away to villagers, touched lives without asking for anything. To him, power was something to be shown, not shared. "She insulted you," Kolo told his cousin one day. "You should have let her suffer." But the older man only smiled. "She suffered enough. And she changed." Kolo scoffed. "Change is a trick. People don't change. They pretend. I'll prove it." That night Kolo made plans. Weeks later, Ajuma received an invitation. A letter written in golden ink was delivered to her doorstep. "Dear Ajuma, woman of wisdom and humility, you are invited to the City of Lights to speak at the Gathering of Souls. Come and share your journey so others may be blessed." At first, Ajuma was hesitant. She had never left her village, never spoken in front of crowds. But the villagers insisted. Her mother held her hand. Her sister helped her pack. "You've carried shame," Amina said. "Now carry your story." Ajuma climbed into the black car that came for her. The same kind of car the mysterious man had arrived in months ago. She didn't know it yet, but this journey was not just a speech. It was a test. The city was brighter than anything Ajuma had ever imagined. Tall buildings kissed the clouds. Roads sparkled with lights. Women wore shiny fabrics. Men wore watches that cost more than huts. And yet, everything felt loud, distracted. No one looked each other in the eye. The Gathering of Souls was being held in a grand hall with velvet seats and glass ceilings. As Ajuma stepped in, she felt her feet tremble. She gripped the mirror in her pocket, whispered to the stone, and placed the feather by her ear. It didn't sing. Not yet. The crowd was large. City people, influencers, reporters, all of them waiting to hear the village girl with elephant ears speak. She was introduced. A spotlight landed on her. Ajuma stepped forward. She took a deep breath and began. "I once believed I was better than others," she said softly. "Because I could speak. Because I could mock. Because I could laugh the loudest." He paused. The room was silent. Then my ears began to grow. Not just outside but inside. They forced me to listen to everything I once ignored. The pain of others. The silence of shame. The loudness of pride. She reached into her shawl and pulled out the mirror. "This showed me the truth. Then the stone. This taught me strength. Then the feather. And this is still teaching me to listen." A tear rolled down a woman's cheek in the second row. Even the sound engineers stopped fiddling with their equipment. Ajuma's voice was no longer soft. It was steady, grounded, powerful. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. But not everyone was clapping. In the corner of the hall, Kolo sat watching. "A type is cold." He stood. Later that night, as Ajuma prepared to return to her hotel, a knock came at her door. It was Kolo, dressed in a fine suit, carrying a gold-plated phone. "My cousin may have forgiven you," he said, voice slick, "but I believe people like you just wear masks. Remove the ears and your pride grows back." Ajuma said nothing. He stepped closer. "I want to offer you something," he said. "A deal. I'll give you land, money, house. But only if you throw away the mirror, the stone and the feather. Live like the woman you once were." Ajuma looked at him quietly. Then she smiled. Not with pride, but with understanding. "I'd rather live poor and listen than die rich and deaf." She gently closed the door. The feather began to hum again. Ajuma returned to the village a different woman, but not because she had seen the city. Because she had faced a new test, and chosen differently. The village threw a feast. Drums danced. Fires blazed. The children sang songs about her. But Ajuma stayed near the edge like she always did. Later that night, under a star-filled sky, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "You passed the second test." It was him, the billionaire. Her silent teacher. Ajuma bowed her head. "Thank you," she said softly. "For the curse." He chuckled. "It was not a curse. It was a mirror." They sat beside the fire. "You were once known for your ears," he said. "Now you are known for your heart." Ajuma looked at the stars, then whispered, "What now?" He stood. "Now you teach." Years passed. Ajuma became a storyteller, teacher, healer. She traveled from village to village, carrying the mirror, the stone, and the feather. She spoke to kings and orphans, to priests and prisoners. She never judged. She only listened. And when she passed away, decades later, people gathered from far and wide. They didn't speak of her ears. They spoke of her heart, of how she once listened to the wind and learned how to change. Sheaf of Rice. Final moral of the story. True transformation doesn't come from punishment, but from the willingness to face oneself, to listen deeply, and to choose differently when given the chance.